guess you lose some and win some, long as the outcome is income.
Welcome back to the Outcomes Income podcast with your hosts, Saif Derzi and Reese Booth. Today, I'm joined by none other than property expert Saj Hussain. We go on and talk about Saj's earlier career before he got into property, how he started and scaled his multiple property businesses. We also go on and talk about how the younger generations these days are too privileged and how they're not staying hungry enough to be able to create this hustle culture. Stay tuned, sit back, relax, and listen in. Saj, welcome to the Outcomes Income podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
So, you're really well known, really well respected in the property industry, but today what I really want to try and uncover is actually your business and entrepreneurial journey over the years, because obviously I know you've had quite a journey and obviously you've had a lot of success out of it as well. So, it'll be good to kind of just go back a bit to your kind of beginnings and where you are now, I guess, in your business career and journey.
Yeah. So I guess at a fairly young age, probably about 12, 13, I became more conscious and aware that we couldn't afford things and have nicer things. Beautiful, loving family that I'm from. My father fell ill when I was probably 8, 9 years old. His kidneys failed, so he was on kidney dialysis for a long time. My mum had become a full-time carer for him. And I didn't have any other brothers, two younger sisters. And when you're young, it's just your life, you don't think about anything. And as I started getting older, I realized actually, why can't we have this? Why can't I afford to go on the school skiing trip that everybody's going on? Why can't I have those new Nike trainers that everyone's buying right now? And that's where I just became more aware. And I think my hunger started at that point. I want these things, I want nicer things. And so very early on, I was interested in computing. It was fairly early days in the mid 80s, this is. And I started selling computer games. So I did that while I was at school and made sort of relatively, for a young kid, good money, which enabled me to buy nicer computer equipment and more valuable computer equipment. I think that's where my real kind of flame came from. Yeah. And it just stuck with me and the flame got bigger over time.
Wow. So from your perspective, would you say you've had an aha moment up until now, or do you feel like you are either still working towards an aha moment or you don't really want an aha moment because you're getting these small wins along the way?
Yeah, I heard a phrase, 12, 15 years ago, that success is a journey, not destination.
Yeah.
And that really hit me and I was thinking, actually, what am I chasing?
Yeah.
And you've got to enjoy the process. And, we were speaking before as well, and you love what you do. And I really do enjoy what I do. And I don't know now whether I'm just so addicted to work and I just can't stop, or whether that's just my life. It just continues and I enjoy doing it. So I don't think there's an aha moment I'm heading towards. I think as I've got older, I've kind of evolved. You take less risks. I've took some really big, stupid risks as well in my early days. I become a bit more cautious as you get older. So I don't think there's a particular aha moment. I say I'm constantly evolving, but I'm trying to enjoy each and every day, because the reality is, I believe, every day is a blessing, but on borrowed time. We never know when that time's up.
That's true. And I think, the first couple of years of business is difficult, and I found it horrible in all honesty, but you've got to get through those hard times. And then you go on the other side of the spectrum, but then you kind of need to go back and just find this balance. And I think balance is important. And with balance comes celebrating, every single day that you're still in business, you're in good health, your family's in good health, etc. Yes. I think it's a good day.
Yeah, I think I'm probably not very good at celebrating, if I'm being honest, but I am massively grateful. So I have a huge amount of gratitude.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, I guess that's my little celebration. Every day is a win. And that's the way I see it. So I don't know if I still get excited by doing deals. We were talking about doing deals then. I love that buzz about doing the deal. It's chasing the deal and getting the deal done. But once it's done, the money's in the bank and you think, next, and you move on. There's no real,
it's true.
Okay, let's just go out and have a big celebration, because that's just, that's not the way I am. But I think it is important that we do that. And everybody's different personalities aren't all the same. So because I do things a certain way, or you do things in a certain way, it doesn't mean that somebody else listening or watching to this right now needs to copy that.
Yeah.
And one thing I've learned is we take the things that appeal to us from other people. And I think I like the way they do that, and I'd like to implement that in my life, as opposed to I need to copy everything that person is doing.
Yeah, well, And I think a lot of people kind of try and get into things thinking, let me either create something so innovative, that's going to be that unicorn product, which, let's be honest, is really, really tough, or let me just copy. But there's also something in between, which is doing something that's already out there, but just doing it a bit better.
Yes,
that's all it is.
100%. And that I love that. It's, if I'm going to do something, we were just talking about learning and knowledge a few months ago now, and I said I'm constantly learning and trying to improve. But when there's something I've identified I want to learn, I will try and find the best, most knowledgeable, most experienced people in that thing and just consume as much as I possibly can from them. And that might be physically sitting down, speaking to them, or it might be reading their material, watching their stuff online, or whatever it might be if they're not so accessible. And just learning as much as I can on that topic, but then learning from other people that talk about it as well. So the knowledge is almost like an inch wide and a mile deep. And that's how you can start then taking something and think, okay, how can I now tweak this and make it better? So the overall idea you might copy. So let's say we're on the high street here and there's just so many burger shops and kebab shops and chicken shops and stuff on the high street here.
Yeah.
But if you look, there's 2 or 3 that do really, really well. They're the most expensive.
Yeah.
They don't do your 99p chips. It's probably about £9 for a burger. But they do really well. But what they've done is taken that model, but tweaked it and made it better than everybody else's. So I'm 100% with that concept.
But and that's the thing, something that stands out, so it's the same thing that you're kind of expecting, but it's slightly standing out. So I remember I was in Manchester a couple of months ago, and I saw a car wash, and it was a car wash that works on a membership basis.
Oh, wow.
So you pay X amount every single month, and you can get your car wash, your car wash there unlimited. Now they know that not everyone's going to come every single day and wash their car, but just to give you an example, that's a form of creating something that's quite transactional into a recurring income.
Yes.
And it's no different to any other car wash.
Turning a customer into a client. Yeah.
Exactly that. So I think people shouldn't really be, because when I started out, before I even got into business, every day I had a journal, sit and write down, what am I going to do? What I'm going to create? And it's like I was trying too hard to think about something. I think it should come quite naturally as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think when I think about when I come up with the best ideas, it's either where I'm the most stressed and my backup is against the wall and you're under massive pressure because you need to find a solution fast, or I'm just the most relaxed and most calm, maybe if I'm on holiday somewhere, and then the most creativity comes to me at that time. When I sit down because I need to create something, or whether it's an idea, a solution to something, or a proposal, that's when I'm probably perform the least in terms of in that situation. And I guess we'll all have different things, and we find where those points are for us and be able to tap into them as we need them.
So let's talk about that, because that's really, really interesting. And I think for me, I really understand the back up against the wall in order to try and get results, because as humans we have to be stressed in order to try and do things differently. Let me take you back to COVID. What did COVID do differently for you and your businesses? Because I know obviously you've got different businesses, but
Yes.
What did you do differently as a result of COVID?
I say initially it was a very scary moment, being completely open and honest with you about it. Because I work with a lot of other investors. I use a lot of investor money in the stuff that we do, and I had a couple of investors that had a significant amount of money with me, just literally go into a panic as soon as we started having lockdowns. And the challenge was, I didn't know what was happening. It's not as though they were panicking because they were being irrational. I didn't really know what was going on as well and what's going to happen. How long are these lockdowns going to happen? Actually, what if all our tenants just stop paying rent because they can't work and they can't afford to pay us? We can manage if a few don't. What if all of them don't pay? What's that going to do to us? And all these fears are going on in my mind as well, thinking, how are we going to deal with this? And then, I'd done some refinancing quite quickly. I'd raised it was a couple of £1 million to kind of pay some investors and stuff and just get everything, which I managed to do. It cost me a small fortune in terms of cost to do that fairly quickly. And so it dealt with that situation. Then let's just say the ethical investor that put the money in the 2 million that I had to tidy up all this other stuff over here started getting a little twitchy as well. And I'm thinking, it's like, where am I going with this? And I hadn't breached any terms or anything. Everything was good. And it's just that because there was uncertainty in the market, everybody goes into panic mode. So I'm trying to fix things. I'm trying to put fires out. And then it's like, as soon as you put one fire out, another one's appearing over here. And then I said, look, all I can do is do the best I possibly can. I can't do any more than that. And I think when I started thinking about it in that way, it felt like there's a weight off my shoulders, because I said, look, I'm already doing the best I possibly can. There's nothing more I can do. And, whatever happens. And basically, I'd had that money, then I refinanced some other properties onto long-term mortgages, and then I kind of cleared that debt as well. I didn't kind of breach anything or break any arrangements, but it was just a very, very stressful time. And it's only thinking about, actually, you know what, I'm doing everything I can. I'm doing the best I can. I haven't hurt anybody. No one's lost money with me. That the weight kind of felt it lifted off my shoulders.
Excellent. And what have you, or what are you doing differently now, going through that process and through that pain and reactiveness at the time, but that everyone was feeling, not just you? It was a international situation.
I think one of the things that I'd become a little bit relaxed about at that time is when investors got money with me, we might have an arrangement that it's with me on a project for a year or whatever, and sometimes rolled over onto something else, and we just let it continue on that basis. But what I didn't realize is, or I hadn't thought about, is if quite a few of them asked for funds back at the same time. And because I hadn't put them onto new arrangements of, okay, we're now putting this project, putting this period of time, that could be a problem. And COVID was, highlighted that for me. So now I'm just much more conscious with tying stuff with certain projects in things. So I'm not in that position, or I'm not going to fall back into that position again.
Okay, I think that's good. And I think from your perspective, has there been anything, I guess, what's the main positives that your business has done to evolve? And hopefully, if there is, for example, another black swan event, avoid what happened in this black swan event.
I guess the thing with black swans are that nobody ever really predicts them, apart from maybe 2 people in the world at that time no one's listening to. And they come in such a way that you are just blindsided. You just, So I don't know if you really can plan for a black swan event. You just have to ensure that you've de-risked elements of your business the best you possibly can, and you compartmentalize parts of the business.
Yeah. So
if something was to happen, it's contained within this environment and not something that would destroy everything that's there. Just using a random example, I don't do this, but as an example, it might be you've got some property that's unencumbered, you've got some property that on a fixed repayment type mortgages, you've got some on interest only. So you're spreading a little bit your risk in terms of if the market conditions change, a black swan event happens, then you might have pressure on one side, but not everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's thinking about it in that way. How can I separate things out, and for it not to be a domino effect if there's ever an issue?
Because the reason I ask you that question is, I think you're absolutely right, and this is also from our side of things. We see a lot of people always like, what if this happens? What if that happens? The problem with that mindset is every single time you try and do something, you're going to be held back by something. What if? So what we realized from COVID is how good we are at actual crisis management. And also a lot of other people have realized they are very good at crisis management. And crisis management could be, look, our building site has had to shut down because we can't get materials, etc. Let's put a plan in place. What we're going to do, and trying to almost bring everyone together. We called it the Cobra meeting back in COVID. So that's something just for people to take away, to think you don't know it all, you won't ever know it all, and you can't always be prepared. This is how entrepreneurship is. You're almost like jumping out of a skydiving aeroplane without a parachute.
Yeah, you build it on the way down. And I think just going a little bit deeper on that, when we are in that situation, it's being rational and logical where everybody around you is being irrational.
Yeah.
That's really when you're performing under a crisis situation. You're thinking, hang on, let's just calm for a moment. Let's just think this through. What are our options? What are the solutions? Which is going to be the safest way for us to navigate through this?
Absolutely. I think that's keeping a cool head and trying to think rationally is what business is all about. No one teaches you that.
Yes.
That just comes from experience as well, and just trusting the process. That's what a lot of people always say to me that are older, wiser than me. They always say, just trust the process. So coming back to that as well, I guess just from your point of view. So if you were going to be giving advice to someone, for example, that is in business and is thinking, I want to start taking on more, for example, whether it's investor finance or money or whatever, and I want to start scaling. From your perspective, how can they go about doing that, but also at the same time looking at risk at the same time? Because you're now in a position maybe where you've scaled, you've grown, so you were quite aggressive, and now you're trying to be a bit more, let's say, maybe defensive with what you're doing, because obviously you're taking less risk. But for the younger generations, people want to start out, or people are just really starting to scale. Can they still do that in this environment, whether it's a property business or any other business really?
Yeah, I think when you're younger, you have the hunger, the energy, the drive, plus hopefully many miles in the tank ahead of you. So that is the time where you can afford to take risk, because reality is you've got very little to lose at that time as well. It doesn't mean that you should be stupid in your risk taking, but actually the fact that you haven't got much to lose means you can put more into it in order to produce a better result. So you're taking bigger risks with smaller amounts in order to get those wins. But as you grow, you're taking much smaller risks with larger amounts to leverage in terms of get the result. So at the beginning, it is and if I think about, I've been in business over 30 years. If I was starting out, what would I do differently? I would look to partner with really smart people. That thing about surrounding yourself with the smartest people, the best people I can find, and work with them in that thing, as this is a project. So it's not having one business partner across everything, it's having multiple partners, which is what I do today. So I've got lots of partners in different things, and I just want the best person for that to be my partner, and give them whatever support I can for them to perform the best, and for me to contribute where I'm going to add value in that as well. And at the beginning, when I first started, because I've always been a collaborator in business. Always, how can I work with somebody else and grow what we're doing? At the beginning, I guess some of the early mistakes I made, and when my very first business partner was somebody I'd known from school, and we set up an IT company, whilst we're still at university at that time. And the reason we did that is because there were similarities in our personality, and we resonate with we see things in other people and we resonate with them, and we see a sense of connection. So what that also does, which I realized later on, is you end up amplifying the strengths of that relationship. Let's say both are very good at going out to talking to people, bringing in the sales, bringing in the business. Often those people are also terrible at the admin and the accounting side.
Yeah, it's true.
So what you've done is not only amplified your strengths, but you've amplified your weaknesses as well. Now you've got an even bigger hole on this side. And I think when we look into partner with people, it's looking at who can bring what value. There needs to be less of an overlap of skills and more of mutual benefit. And I think they perform are the best partnerships. And thinking about partnerships like marriages, you take your time, make a decision that this is going to be a long relationship, hopefully we're entering into. So not just like literally make a decision on a whim.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's, because a lot of people talk about joint venturing and partnering and stuff like that. And the reality is you do need to see people in different environments. So you want to see people when they're stressed, when their back's against the wall, because when they're happy and everything's going well, they're not really showing you their true colours at the end of the day. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying you really know someone when their back's against the wall. Are they going to problem solve, or are they going to bury their head in the sand?
Yes.
And that's the key difference. So, you talk about sort of, starting out and really trying to look at continuing that journey. So Warren Buffett's famous quote is always, obviously be fearful when people are greedy and be greedy when people are fearful. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, people were waiting for a market crash.
Yes.
And then it got to a point where the market kept on going up and up and up, and they said, we'll keep waiting. Now we're at a point in the market where things are quite different. There's a lot of difficulties and a lot of challenges, but people are saying, well, there's too many problems, we're going to wait a bit longer. So that's just always the mindset that people have. In today's market, what should people be looking at that other people are not? Because often in markets, whether it's property or other assets, you should be buying an asset or buying something when it's not as popular and selling it when it does become popular. So maybe you can just give people a few tangible things that they can be looking at today.
I think that's idealistic. to say we want to be buying something that nobody else is paying attention to it. You know, whether it's in the watch market, whether it's property, whether it's cars, whether it's some other kind of commodity, when there's not that much interest in it, knowing that a time will change where more interest will be on that, and that will push up the price. Supply and demand, basic economics, right? But how do we actually know whether that was the right move? The only way we know is when we look back in the rearview mirror after the event, and we can recall, actually, that was a good point, or I should have at that point bought something. But there's no real learning in that, because it's not that we can go back and change that event and do that at that time. We can just say, well, I could have, that would have been the best time. But really what we need to be thinking about, what we can actually do and what we're doing. So what I mean by that is, any time, for example, in property, any time is a good time to buy. What you buy and how you buy it might change, but any time is a good time to buy. Now, waiting can be a strategy, and I would put that in the category of hope. And I don't think hope is a good way of succeeding.
Absolutely.
So in a current market right now, where we're just at that point where market's starting to slow down a little bit in the context of property now, where there are maybe slightly fewer buyers in the market, sellers are starting to experience a little bit of pain, it's taking longer to sell. So do we wait until there's more pain from those sellers, they become more flexible and accept lower prices, and then buy? Or do we look at what there is now and how can we monetize and benefit from that now? So my view always is we go now.
Yeah.
Because if we wait, there is no certainty that's going to happen. We would like that to happen, but it could be as what happened in COVID. Everyone's expecting prices are going to fall, prices are going to fall. What happens? The prices just shot up.
Yeah. So looking at averages.
We can't predict the market. Yeah. So we can look at, okay, whatever's going on now, how can we benefit and monetize and profit from what's happening right now in front of us?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's right. It's just averaging things out. You know, it's like how people do stocks and shares. They call it pound cost averaging. If you buy consistently, whether the market's up or down, whatever, you average it out. So timing, I don't think I ever know someone that's timed the market perfectly. I don't think with any asset class.
If they did, it's luck.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So just kind of coming back on this point, I guess from your point of view, looking from the outside in, is there anything within, let's just talk property specifically, is there anything that's unloved at the minute that you feel like there might be opportunity? For example, whether it's, I don't know, some people are talking about office blocks being repurposed because obviously they're very unloved at the minute, whether it's retail or commercial. So there's obviously a lot of things that are quite hot still in the market, but then there's also a lot of unloved assets. Anything that you think of that's quite an unloved asset at the minute that you find potential in?
I think if we brainstormed it for the next half an hour, we'd come up with a massive list.
Okay.
And people just assume there isn't. There's always things that's interesting. Like, for example, let into a little secret. People think Birmingham is too tough in terms of HMOs right now. That's our bread and butter stuff. We know it really well. We know it inside out. And when people turn around and say, oh, you know, HMOs not performing so well, they're thinking of selling, I'm saying, I'm buying. I'm interested.
Yeah. And
particularly with it being an Article 4 area, the assumption is, oh, you can't produce any HMOs. No. It's just another barrier to entry. It doesn't mean it can't be done. And if you do it well, you'll still make money. So it's not that the market has changed. People's perceptions of the market has changed. Yes, the market is more competitive. So we've been doing HMOs from 11, probably getting close to 12 years now. And if we think about the first products that we created and took to market, i.e. what those rooms looked like compared to what they are now, they're just like chalk and cheese. There's a massive difference. So yes, the market's evolved, but the perceptions have evolved more. People think, oh, you know, HMOs have had their time in the market. You know, there's no space for them. The reality is, when people leave university, they've spent time living with other people, and there are many people that want to continue that journey. They want to continue living with other people. They don't want to go off and have their own space. And that's one category. Then you've got the other category of people which, through their financial position, they can't afford to go and rent a studio or a flat and then kit it all out and get all the appliances and everything and then pay all the bills each month. Their budget only allows them to be within a room. And if you can provide a nice, comfortable environment for them, there's going to be a market for that.
Yeah.
So those are two core markets, for example, graduates and those what we call blue-collar workers. There's always going to be a market for that. And the rents have gone up significantly. So that's like just an example of where most people think, oh, there is an opportunity there. There is. And retailers, you touched on, the market's changing completely. Amazon has completely changed the world right now in terms of our buying habits and just us buying more online. And for sure, I believe, over the next 10 years, the high street, like this high street that we're on now, is a very, very buoyant high street in Birmingham. But it's changing. You can see shops are coming up to rent with to-let boards on them that would have previously lasted a week, and now they've been up 4 months. And it's because things are just starting to change. And who is starting to take up that empty space? More experience-based, going for a coffee, going for a haircut. There's some craft beer type outlets starting to appear here on the high street. So these kind of things are not the things you can just order online.
Yeah.
And so it's a more experienced type of stuff that's starting to appear. So taking those buildings and repurposing them. These buildings, many of them around us, existed 100 years before we ever landed on this earth.
Yeah.
Now, so when they were built at that moment in time, they were built for a certain purpose. And what we are now doing is repurposing them. So when we take a 100-year-old terrace house and we renovate it and sell it back in the open market, what we're doing is reconfiguring its layout and making it appeal for today's type of customer.
Yeah.
But the basic structure is still the same. So I think there's always opportunities to just look at buildings and how can we repurpose them. And sometimes there's a certain appeal, like this is an office building, it works beautifully as apartments, but it works just as well as offices as well. And small units, industrial units, massive demand for that. Again, I think the internet economy is created that way. You've got Amazon and eBay type businesses that need small, 1,000 to 2,000 square foot type little units. I think there's opportunity in there. Storage units, I think there's good opportunity there as well. The social sector, i.e. supportive living, etc., we don't really get involved in that space. But those that are going into the more advanced type of care, I think there's massive potential there. As the NHS is struggling, the government is shifting more to how can we get independent organisations and companies to look after people that need a lot of care and support. I think those kind of sectors are growing as well. But then they become more, I guess, I see them less as property, because property is just part of the process as opposed to it's a property based.
It's an operational business.
Yeah. So yeah, there's just a few thoughts. There'd be so many. I mean, like I said, we could spend half an hour just talking about it. There's lots. Good. There's always. I'm very optimistic like that. It's a case of it doesn't matter what's going on. There is some way to make money in property.
That is brilliant. And I think just to take away from that, so for everyone listening, optimism is so important, because we can all be pessimistic every day with everything going on. But the reality is optimism, and I see this among a lot of entrepreneurs, they're always positive. They're always optimistic. Yes. And they always trust the process. And I'll come back to this wording, trusting the process. But from what you've just said, just to kind of summarize it, you're looking for things which have a barrier to entry, because obviously that's preventing the mass from getting into it, number one. Number two, you're looking for something that is mass market.
Yes.
And three, it's affordable. So those are kind of your three things that kind of fits within your category.
Yeah. With the affordable, we try and go towards the top tier, but we're not right at the top.
Yeah.
So, if you're thinking about it in the context of cars, we're not producing Rolls Royces, but we're producing S-Class Mercedes.
Yeah, that's a good way. But that still is relatively the luxury end of the affordable market. So, for example, you're not trying to, for example, rent out a 3-bed semi-detached house at top end money. Yes. You're renting out a room, so that's the kind of middle ground. Okay, understood. So I like that. And as a model, I think people can take those elements away and apply it, whether it's to property or outside of property and business in general.
The principles are the same, whether it's property or anything. It just happens to be we make our money from property, but it could be anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't really matter what that product is. And I'm a fan of property because I think it's a strong asset that's always appreciated in value as well. So although you could be trading it, doing stuff with it, making money from it, over time it's going up in value as well as you're doing these things. As well. So I think there is that massive benefit. You also touched on in terms of being positive and optimistic. I jump out of bed. The first thing I do, I put my rose tinted spectacles on.
Yeah.
Because everything is rosy. Yeah. And we'll always find a way and a solution. And what that comes down to is really you've got to have belief in yourself.
Absolutely. You've
got to be 100% committed and backing yourself. Because if there's even a slight bit of doubt in you backing yourself, then you'll struggle. But if you think, look, I know that I'm capable of this, and regardless what happens, I'm going to make this work. And when you have that kind of approach to things, you find a way. And we only have to look around at other human beings in terms of what they've achieved. There's people on their way to Mars right now.
Yeah.
That's a human being that's come up with that idea that we need to be going over there.
Absolutely.
And they'll probably find a way to do it. So when we're talking about day-to-day property or business or something, it's it's an insignificant thing compared to what other human beings have achieved.
Yeah.
People talk about, I don't have enough time or whatever. Everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. It's how we choose to use those 24 hours.
Absolutely.
And we will spend them on where we attach the most importance to.
Where the value is, your values.
Yeah. And if for you it's important to change your financial situation, to make more money, to build something scalable, something maybe your kids can benefit from, if you attach enough importance to that, you'll find the way.
Yeah.
That's the thing you can't teach. You have to find that within.
Wow. And that's why we see a lot of people. So I see some of the most successful entrepreneurs coming from nothing, and especially, and this might be a common theme, but they might have single parents. Like a single mum is quite a common theme, because when you see a single mum raising 3 or 4 kids with 2 or 3 jobs, you won't know it until you've obviously experienced it. I've not experienced it myself, but I can understand it as I'm getting more mature and older. That is a very, I'm a dad myself now, and sometimes when I get left with my kid for an hour, I'm like, how do moms do it?
Yes.
I give it to them for that. So, it's really important that people come from a point of view of feeling hungry, because if you come from a privileged point of view, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
However, you're not hungry enough to go the extra mile, to hustle, to get to where you want to get to. And I think that's really, really important. You need to have that kind of fire in your belly. So I agree with that.
I completely get that. My wife and I talk about this quite a lot. We've got 4 kids. 3 of them are adults. They work in the business. Youngest one, she's still at school, and they're all good kids. They do well in what they're doing, but none of them have got this massive fire in the belly. And I'm constantly having these conversations with my wife, tearing her hair out, and I say, look, they just don't have the drive. Do you know what I mean? Like, one of my kids, when he was working with us for a while, he'd turn up because we have an office at home as well. He'd turn up to the office at 11 o'clock with his bowl of cornflakes, with his blanket around him. I thought, have you turned up for work?
There's no discipline there. in terms of wanting it.
Yeah, because it's easy, and we've broken that habit. But the point I'm trying to make is that real hunger and drive isn't there because their environment is being comfortable.
Right.
Because we've created a nice environment for them. We've given them everything they'd want. They're not spoiled kids, but you want your kids to have the best. Yeah, our parents wanted us to have a better life than them. We want our kids to have a better life than us, and that's what we try and do, and we try and create that for them. But at the same time, I have this constant battle with myself about, well, maybe we've overfed them. Maybe if we starved them a little bit, there would have been a bit more hunger.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So, but these are things I don't have an answer to.
Yeah, but I'm taking this away because obviously I've got a very young daughter, and I'm taking these things away from you because obviously you're way ahead in that. And I relate a lot to Warren Buffett because I really respect the guy. But he had a pinball machine in his house, and he used to give his kids pocket money, and they used to play with the pinball machine, and they used to collect it at the end and then give it back to them. So I think it's just the kind of, he shows them that money revolves. And I do think, as much as it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, how much money you have, etc., I do think there still needs to be those disciplines set just for the sake of letting them learn. I think it's going to be a balancing act, because at the end of the day, your kids, you're going to want to provide everything for them, and etc., etc. But at the same time, I think they need to understand the value of certain things. Yes. So, it's going to be something that I'm going to have to go through as a journey, but I think you'll have to just figure out as you go along, obviously.
Yeah, and I became a granddad recently for the first time.
Congratulations!
As well. Thank you. And I look at her now; she's just a few months old, and I'm thinking, in 20 years' time, what's the world going to be like? How putting everything else aside, what's the business world going to be like? What are people going to be doing? What are the careers that people are going to be doing? So when I was at school, mainly the careers that exist now never existed.
Yeah.
Some, for example, tech stuff and things like that, or even if you ask a lot of kids these, what do you want to do? Be a YouTuber.
Yeah.
What's that? Is that a thing? Says someone that runs a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I was going to say, but fair enough.
Yeah.
So, in your business, how important is social media? Just talking about YouTube, but how important is social media to you in your business?
So I would say the single most valuable skill in business is communication. And that is not just verbal, it's written, it's your message. Basically, when you break that down, what does it come down to? It's your ability to communicate a message, get people to come to you, want to do business with you. And if you take it a step further and say, what is it? We're talking about sales and marketing. So I think if you if you think about, those are the most important skills in a business for me, from my perspective. Some people would argue that's not the case. It might be others. I think you should master the skills of selling and marketing, bringing people to you, converting. And I think what social media has now been able to do is create more of a level playing field, in the sense that you can create an audience for your whatever it is you do to grow your business. So in short, it's massively beneficial, which is why I invest so much time and effort into creating content, giving stuff out there for free. Now, one time somebody said to me, look, why are you spending so much time and money creating content for people that are never going to spend a penny with you? I was, well, probably 99% of the people that consume my content will never spend a penny with me. However, if they enjoy it and love it, they'll share it with others and they become raving fans.
Yeah.
They don't just spend any money with me, but they become your marketeers.
They're a community.
Absolutely. So I think there's just so much value in that, and your name and your brand. I think the first thing you should always do is go and register your name as a .com. Your first name, last name.com. Go and register that. If it's taken, do a variation of it, because that's going to be with you for forever. And whatever platforms you're on, be consistent in terms of your name's the same on all the social media platforms. Your picture is the same. So you start building up this brand, whatever it is you're doing in business, because you are the face of the business.
Yeah.
So I can go off on this topic because I'm so passionate about it, but I think it's fundamentally important social media business these days.
Because a lot of people talk about the business, but then they don't talk about, and social media is a love-hate relationship for a lot of people. Probably hate for the people that consume it in the wrong way, love for the people that create it and obviously get business off the back of it, but or people that learn from it as well, obviously watching YouTube videos, etc. From your perspective, did you have to learn the intricacies, the ins and the outs of every single thing to do with the algorithms and how you upload things and how you do things? Or did you find people that knew everything and kind of just project managed it, as opposed to actually learning everything yourself and then bringing in people?
Yeah, so I'd say firstly, I'm much more of a producer than consumer.
Right. When
it comes to social media content, I actually don't spend a lot of time on social. My diary is like a military style, back to back all day.
Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but I create a lot of content for social media, and each platform is different as well. And so in short, to answer your question, I've spent a lot of time, effort, money learning about how to make certain platforms work well from people, and then finding who can help me implement this.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I like to understand it, but not be the person that's doing it. So if I take this back to when I used to run an IT company, so I was a Cisco certified engineer, Microsoft certified engineer, Novell certified engineer, but I didn't do any of the actual work. I was qualified in these disciplines so I could understand the process, and if I've got somebody else doing this for me, I know where it's going. So strategically, I can guide it and lead the way. And I guess that's what I still want to do. The one challenge with social media platforms, they're evolving every day.
Yeah.
So you can't create a master plan and say, right, this is what we're going to do, roll it over the next 5 years, because in 5 months everything will have changed again.
That's true. Okay, and I guess from your side of things, when you're obviously, again, whatever you're trying to do, I guess within business, are you then using social media as your platform to either push it out or kind of get your audience engaged in it? So you're using it almost like, I'm building a community of people, I'm building a product or service or whatever, and I'm kind of using both together to try and get to where you want to get to?
Yeah, so the community, the audience for me is very important. They also give you some guidance in terms of what they want to see, where they want to hear, what's going on in the marketplace. And yes, within that, we have clients that come from that as well, because ultimately people do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. What social media does is allow me to enable people to get to know me, like me, and trust me before we've ever even spoken.
Yeah.
So if you think about that from a buying cycle, what happens is the first time we're engaging is they're very close to the buying process. They're very close to committing the purchase, whatever that purchase is. Sometimes it's just buying into you.
Yeah, because you've broken down all the friction.
Because they've already consumed hours of your content. And if you can just be you,
Yeah.
Because when I was first trying to learn how to speak on stage and all this stuff, and look at Tony Robbins, and I want to be like Tony Robbins, and then one day I had someone say to me, look, there's only one Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
You've got to be you. And there's only one version of you. And rather than having a stage version, a camera version, a family person, you just be you all the time.
Yeah, that's really.
You don't
really
have
nice.
to step into different things. There's no, okay, what persona am I now? You just be the way you are. And sometimes, and the way I guess I've built a bit of an audience is I just say as it is.
Brilliant.
Do you know what I mean? I don't fluff it up. And I just say as it is. I'll share the content. I'll explain knowledge based on only what I know.
Yeah.
Rather than delivering theory. We were joking earlier on. I said I loved business from an early age, and my early mentors were my school business studies teacher, what was called commerce at the time, and then in college, my business studies teacher, and I was just like in awe of these people. Is later I realized that none of them had ever run a business,
Yeah.
and it was just all theory they're teaching us.
Absolutely.
Which was fine. It helped me go in at the time. They inspired me. But in the same way, I want to share what I actually know and what I understand, as opposed to, oh, here's theory for you for the sake of it. And I guess from that point of view, it's worked and worked for me. Then the other thing that I think is important about a personal brand, which is kind of slight variation of just social media, is it doesn't matter what you do in business. You could build a business and sell it, but your personal brand will always be you, because it's you effectively.
Yeah.
And then if you go off onto something else and you've already got an audience, that audience goes with you.
It's true.
So if, for example, I'm doing property, and then tomorrow if I start talking about, makeup and beauty, there's probably not many people in my audience that might be interested in that. So it's got to be relevant.
Yeah, of course.
But you all basically why is it that the Kardashians can launch a piece of makeup and it just explodes overnight? Because they have an audience.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so important these days.
Wow. And I know, obviously, you're a very humble guy. Clearly, your USP is your knowledge in your brain, not necessarily being able to show off and everything else. So, and I'll say that openly in front of the camera. I'm sure everyone kind of takes that away by knowing you. But have you found that more difficult trying to basically grow your audience amongst all of the noise out there, where there maybe isn't as much knowledge, but it's more about the persona and the controversy and the everything else that's so flashy in this world?
Yeah, it is, and you're always having this battle with yourself of, should we do this or should we do that to get more attention and more eyeballs on what we're doing, because everyone's craving for more audience, because that's it's a way of growing your business. And what ultimately comes down to for me is morals and values and what we base our business on. And for me, that comes from our faith and our religion, and that's what I stick by. That for me, that's what drives everything else.
Yeah.
So yes, you can start putting your flashcards on social media and this, that, and the other, and that will create a huge amount of attention. People love that.
Yeah.
And I understand that, but then I'm compromising in the way I am. So humility for me is very key. It's a key part of who I am.
Absolutely.
I don't try to be that. That's just the way I am, and I don't want to compromise that if it means that actually I'm maybe it's not gonna open up certain doors for me. That's fine.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big believer, as you said, trust the process. I do what I can. I stick to kind of being disciplined to my morals, my values, and it will happen because I believe in myself.
Brilliant. And just kind of the final topic I really want to touch up on, which again is so crucial to business, is the team. And I call them a team because a lot of people say employees, etc. I think team is a much better way of putting it, because everyone's working together and pushing together. Have you had any challenges in starting and growing your team? Have you got any challenges in where you want to try and take the team as well?
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. My biggest strength is my team, and my biggest weakness is my team.
Okay.
So let me elaborate what I mean. There are some people in my business that are just outstanding, and they I love them to bits. Because I can see their capability, their commitment in terms of what we're doing. I see that we'll be together for a long term. We're in for the long term. And then there's many people over the years I've employed for a short period of time. They've gone, like for recently, I had a guy join us on the web development stuff. Very smart, switched on guy. you know, he'd actually never worked for anybody else. He'd always done his own thing. He'd done very, very well for himself. So he was with us probably less than 2 weeks.
Right.
And he was like a fish out of water. Although he was very capable, and on paper and in the conversation, I thought, this guy is very smart, very switched on. He'll fit in perfectly. He'll be able to deliver, you know, what we need. But the environment didn't suit him because he'd never done a 9 to 5.
Right.
He was like, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I feel like I'm doing a bit of coding now. So, so because that's how he'd spent the last 10 years of his life, and he'd done well out of it financially. So it's not like he needed this; he just wanted a change. So, and there's been many times like that where, you know, it just hasn't been the right fit. But you know, what I've also realised is that you know, I'm okay with that. People come, people go. It's fine. It's not a problem. It doesn't bother me anymore. It's costly because every time you employ somebody, you're spending a lot of time and effort trying to market, get the person in. You might even pay recruitment agencies. You've got you know, interview process, and all the time you're giving up.
Absolutely.
And then you've got a period of time where you're training them, getting to settle in. They're not really earning anything for you at that time because you're spending time on them. And then you might be 2-3 months in before actually they're really starting to bring value. And sometimes people may not even last that long, and that might just be you know, a weakness on my part, and I put my hand up to that. But I'm a strong advocate that my team are definitely my strength, and they're also my weakness as well. And I also have to say I'm a terrible manager.
Right.
I'm not a great manager, and that's not where my strength is. I generally will, like, if we're working together, say, right, okay, you're going to do this, off you go, get on with it.
So you're not,
because that's what you said you're going to do.
Yeah, you're not there to handhold.
Yeah,
so
I'm not a micromanager.
Are you a leader?
Yeah, I'll come up with the vision. This is what we need to achieve. Let's make it happen.
So you'll lead.
Let's make
Do
it
you
happen.
have a manager in your company?
Because our business, well, I've got about 25, nearly 26 staff.
Yeah.
I say nearly because we're just taking somebody on at the moment. Across the different business, but we've got lots of different businesses. So it's not that they all work together in one,
right. So
in
you
one
can't
business.
have one manager managing everyone.
Yeah, it's not. And
it's quite fractional.
And we're at that point where I can't quite work out, you know, it doesn't make sense to bring somebody in at the cost it would be to kind of run that. We probably need to be 3, maybe 4 times the size we are for, in my mind, to say, okay, you have now a COO or something that basically takes care of stuff. And
got you.
So I don't know, and I have no aspirations of we're going to double in size next year, whatever. The only aspirations I have is constant growth.
Right.
But it's not hard lines that we need to be this. It will happen when it happens.
That's comfortable. How do you know what growth is, number one, and how do you know when you're growing? Because you've got so many different businesses.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes I say to people, when you do grow so big, you can't see everything.
Yes.
You know, so you lose visibility of everything because you have to let go and trust things. But how can you make that tangible and say, I know we're growing this business and this business and this business every month or every year?
Yeah. So there's let me answer another point that had just come up when you mentioned that, the letting go part. First of all, I found that so hard.
Yeah.
And I think many entrepreneurs do, because we are very good at creating stuff, because that's just in our nature, the way we work, and we have a creative mind, and we come up with 1 million business ideas a week, because that's just in our nature. And then when we create something, it's like a baby. Letting go of that and giving it to somebody is very, very hard to do. So I've struggled with that more so at the beginning. These days I'm much more easier, because I tend to, you know, the compartmentalizing I talk about. I'll protect something. I'll say, okay, that's fine. I'll let go of that. It's in there. And if the worst thing happens, if the whole thing just collapses and implodes in itself or whatever, it's just contained in that space. It's not going to just infect everything. So I tend to think of it more in that way. So that's the letting go bit, because many people tend to struggle with that. And still now, I'm not saying I'm perfect at that. There's many things I still really struggle to let go, and I become the bottleneck in the business. Oh, we can't do that until Saj okays it.
Yeah.
And then there's only 24 hours in the day, and I'm trying to do lots of things that I'm okay with. And sometimes I'm very conscious that's my name, my brand that's going out there. So I do want to make sure I'm happy and I sign off before things go out, in terms of what we're saying, who we're saying what to, how things are going to look. And the attention to detail for me is very important. And that makes it harder to let go. Then in terms of growing, so how do we know we're growing and what we are doing next? That's where I try and empower certain people in the team to say, you take responsibility for that. You know, I want us to get to here. I want us to be at this sort of level or this sort of range. let's work out how, and I want you to implement. But then I don't beat them up with a big stick and saying, if we're not there, if I can see we're moving in the right direction, I'm okay with that. And that might just be because I guess I'm at a point and an age where, as we're saying, I'll take smaller risks with, I'll take, or let me rephrase that. We take bigger risks with smaller amounts.
Yeah.
So we limit what we're doing, and it comes back to that containing it. And that's how, I don't know if that really answers your question.
No, it does. And I think one thing that I always thought about, my business, and this is what I'm going to come back to you about, is if you disappeared for the next year, so literally right now, you disappeared for a whole year, would your business or businesses, thrive, stay stagnant, or decline without you for the next year?
I think all three in different aspects.
Yeah.
So some of our businesses, I think, would probably do a lot better without me interfering all the time, because they're very capable people. When I just let them get on with it and not constantly be sticking my nose in it,
Yeah.
I think they would thrive. Then there's some businesses that are very dependent on me.
Yeah.
No me, no business. So, for example, our training and mentoring business, I am the trainer and mentor. If the mentor, if I'm not there, there is no business.
Absolutely.
So that would just collapse without me. And then some, may not sort of do too well. Because there's time I take lots of breaks and lots of holidays, and things tick along. But some things will slow down because I'm more involved in them.
Yeah.
Other things just move along. The fact that I'm not there makes no difference whatsoever.
Excellent.
And I try to build them in that way, especially ones my kids are involved in as well. So you run that, that's yours.
Yeah.
You get empowered to make the decisions.
It's your responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think they need to feel that sense of responsibility.
Yes. So my son, my eldest son, he often comes to me with, usually once, twice a day, because I'm working at home, he'll come to me with a list of things that he wants. And what I say to him is, what you've come for is for me to approve all those things.
Yeah.
What I want you to do is think about, what would you do in each of those situations? So you've asked me that question. What do you think is the answer?
Yeah.
And even if it's not what I would do, encouraging them to say, okay, well, if you think that's right, let's
make a
go with
decision.
that.
Yeah, and we often say that in the business. We say, make a decision. 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, it's probably going to be right. It's going to be wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
Learn from those. It's not the end of the world. But if you want me to constantly shield you and guide you and do all of this and say yes and approve everything, I'm micromanaging. We don't do
You'll
that.
never grow.
So yeah, I totally agree.
And I'll make decisions that are wrong as well.
Yeah.
So it's not the fact that the decision is going to be right or wrong. It's whose shoulders does that responsibility sit on. It was a mistake, so it sits on my shoulders. And people often don't want that responsibility. If it goes wrong, I don't want it sitting on my shoulders.
Yeah. I realise one thing that is I'm pretty good at is saying straight away when I've done something wrong, and I have no problem with that. I'll always say, I've done this, it's wrong.
Yes.
Apologies, guys. We'll learn from it, and that's the key. Is what can you do differently next time? So, Saj, this has been an amazing podcast. We didn't have a script, and we never have a script, and we always try and just talk, and it leads to social media and Teams, and this is the nitty gritty that everyone wants to hear, not just. Obviously, the journey that everyone goes through is great, but also the nitty gritty is what people really, really want to hear and resonate with. So,
I really
thank you
enjoyed
for sharing that.
Thank you for
really,
having
really
me on.
appreciate that.
Sometimes we do interview the podcast, and you think this is very similar to one I've done, 2 or 3 times before. But it's nice to talk about other things that are slightly different as well. So I really appreciate it. Thank
Absolutely,
you so much.
and we started the podcast, and I started wanting to do the podcast because all I wanted to do was have a chat with people, and I've figured out that I've learned so much from people, and hopefully people have learned a bit from me as well. So it just gets your mind ticking. But the last question we always leave our listeners with is, what's one tangible way that people can take some advice from you today to create an income?
Yeah, I think firstly, the most important thing is you have to have belief and faith in yourself. You've got to believe that, we're in a country right now where there is no glass ceiling. Absolutely. You can create whatever you want. In my case, my grandparents and my parents immigrated this country to create a better life. They had enormous amounts of challenges. There was a massive amount of racism when I was at school. But now when we talk about business, you can create whatever you want. There's nothing holding you back. There's no excuses. The only excuse is the one that you look at in the mirror every morning.
Absolutely.
And if you decide you're going to do it, the world is your oyster. And it isn't even a case of whether it's this business or that business. Just make the decision. Is it going to be the right one? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
But at least you try, you learn, you grow. And I'm learning every single day, and I'll carry on learning till I hit my grave. And if we have that open mindset, you'll do well regardless.
Absolutely. Wow, that's amazing. Well, Saj, we've loved having you on the Outcomes Income podcast. Thank you very much for being on.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes this week's episode of the Outcomes Income podcast with your hosts, Safe Dersey and Reese Booth. What an episode this week was. We have some amazing guests due to be coming on, so please like, share and subscribe. Every time you share this with other people, it allows us to bring even better guests on and record some better content for you guys. We do this for free out of the love of just doing podcasts.